The sky split open like wounded flesh. A trail of fire tore across the night, vanishing behind the tree line with a thunderous crash that sent flocks of birds into the air. In the forest below, all creatures scattered, except one. Ranger lifted his head. The German Shepherd mix had lived in silence since his handler disappeared months ago, leaving only the echo of boots and distant orders in his memory. The outpost where he remained, half swallowed by vines and rust, was abandoned now, but he still patrolled, still waited. Tonight, something was different. The wind shifted, carrying a scent he couldn't name: burnt metal, ozone, blood. He growled low, then began to trot toward the disturbance. The wreckage glowed dimly in a small clearing, broken trees scattered like kindling. Smoke curled upward in lazy spirals. A silver pod, sleek and mangled, was lodged against a rock outcropping. Its hull hissed and buckled as heat bled into the cool air. Inside, Sarilith was dying. Her skin, once iridescent with the soft sheen of vitality, had dulled to a sickly blue. Blood, too thin, too bright, clung to her armor. A gash above her brow pulsed sluggishly. She reached for the emergency panel, but her fingers, delicate and trembling, slipped. The life support systems were already failing. Not like this. Not alone. Through the cracked viewport she saw movement. An earth beast. 4 legs. Teeth. Eyes full of gold and suspicion. She stiffened, instinctually summoning what little bioelectric charge remained in her hands. The creature did not attack. It stood still, observing her with a tilt of the head. She blinked slowly. Her translator was broken. No words would bridge this divide. Still, she leaned forward, blood from her temple streaking the glass. The beast made a sound, neither threat nor fear. A soft whine. Then it stepped forward. Ranger didn't know what she was, only that she was hurt. She smelled of pain and fear. He approached carefully, nose twitching. When she slumped forward against the cracked door, he pressed his shoulder to the metal. It groaned, then gave way. Sarilith tumbled into the dirt, her limbs twitching, breath shallow. Ranger licked her hand. She flinched at first, then stilled. The warmth of the touch, primitive yet oddly comforting, startled her. Her people had no animals, no companions outside war-bred machines. This beast was different. Alive in ways her bio-servants had never been. He circled her once, then trotted off into the darkness. Sarilith tried to move. Her legs answered only partially. Each breath tasted of fire and soil. Her mind reeled. She had 24 Earth hours, perhaps 30, before cellular breakdown would begin. Her kind were not meant to breathe this atmosphere unaided. The crash had destroyed her rebreather. She barely registered the return of Ranger, his jaws holding a soaked piece of cloth, his fur wet from the stream. He dropped it beside her, then vanished again. When he returned, it was with a small, limp animal, furred, lifeless. A rabbit. Sarilith stared. This creature brought her water. Sustenance. A protector, she whispered hoarsely, her tongue thick. She repeated the word in her own language, burned it into her memory. He curled beside her as night deepened. The stars above flickered like old memories, distant, unreachable. Her people had been proud, untouchable. She had been their last royal envoy before the Empire shattered their world. Betrayed. Hunted. Alone. Her flight had not been an escape, but an exile. She hadn't expected to survive. But now survival whispered to her through warm fur and amber eyes. At dawn, her vision blurred with fever. She activated a biopatch on her thigh, one of 3 remaining. A sharp sting, a brief chemical flush. Her organs slowed their collapse, but it was a temporary reprieve. Ranger nudged her, as if urging her up. He paced, glancing back. "You want me to follow?" she rasped. He barked once, sharp and expectant. With great effort, Sarilith dragged herself upright. Her body screamed in protest, her bones like cracked glass beneath her skin. But she moved. Slowly. Stumbling. Trusting this creature who seemed to know what she needed even when she did not. He led her, winding through brambles and moss-laden trails, to an old concrete structure half swallowed by nature. Metal doors, dented but intact. Military symbols faded by rain. She leaned against the wall, wheezing, then looked at him. Ranger barked again, then scratched at the door. This was no ordinary beast. He remembered. He guided. Somewhere behind those ruined walls might be shelter, supplies, hope. Sarilith touched his head gently, fingers brushing coarse fur. You, she whispered, voice cracking, are no beast. She turned toward the door. Ranger beside her. And for the first time since her world fell to ash, she dared to imagine that she might not die after all. The facility was a tomb. Vines crept through fractured concrete, winding around rusted pipes and shattered glass. Sarilith leaned against the frame of the broken door, her body trembling with exhaustion. Each step was agony, her vision swimming with streaks of light that weren't there. Ranger moved ahead, alert and steady, his paws silent against the debris-covered floor. He looked back every few seconds, making sure she followed. Inside, the air was stale with age and dust. Torn papers fluttered in corners. Screens long dead stared blankly from cracked consoles. Sarilith scanned the room, struggling to reconcile what she saw. Human technology, primitive but dense with purpose. Nothing like the sleek, neural-linked systems of her people. And yet, it was here that she would either survive or perish. Her knees buckled. Ranger was at her side instantly, nudging beneath her arm, steadying her as she sank to the floor. She placed a shaking hand on his head, drawing strength from the quiet pressure of his presence. Time was slipping. Her body was failing. The patch had slowed the decay, but the poison of Earth's atmosphere still worked its way through her blood. Her species could not adapt quickly, too fine-tuned, too fragile. She needed nanomedical assistance. She needed a miracle. Ranger moved away, barking at a sealed door in the corner. His claws scratched anxiously at the metal, then he turned to her, barking again, more urgent now. "Something inside?" she muttered, pushing herself up. Her hands shook as she stumbled toward the panel. She tapped the screen. Nothing. Then again, this time connecting her neural interface, bypassing corrupted security layers with alien code. The door groaned, then released. The room beyond was better preserved. Emergency lights flickered weakly, powered by some dying internal system. In the center stood a dormant machine, sleek, cylindrical, and completely alien in design compared to the rest of the base. Sarilith's breath caught. Not human. Not fully. She approached, tracing her fingers over the cold metal. A symbol glowed faintly beneath her touch. Orion, Experimental Life Support Interface. She accessed the core. Fragmented logs spilled across the screen. Human scientists had attempted to create a cross-species medical interface, using xenobiological theories decades ahead of their time. A prototype had been completed, but lacked proper testing. Sarilith's mind raced. Could she integrate it with her nanite protocols? Could she even survive the interface? Ranger paced behind her, restless. "I have no choice," she whispered. "You brought me here. Perhaps this is why." As she began assembling a plan, she coughed violently, blood spattering the floor. Panic rose, but she forced it down. There was still one med patch. One last extension of time. She pressed it to her neck and gritted her teeth against the surge of pain. Her body responded, sluggishly. Just enough to begin. The room contained a deactivated medical drone, half assembled, buried under a tarp. Ranger sniffed at it, then barked sharply, as if to say, "Here. This one." She pulled the tarp aside and stared at the scattered components. No time to finish it properly. But with fusion tools from her escape pod, and parts from the facility, she could jury-rig the systems. The drone's framework would serve as a chassis for her nanite core. Hours passed. Her fingers were numb, her vision dim. Ranger stayed beside her, silent except when she faltered. When her hands shook too violently, he licked her knuckles. When she collapsed briefly, he lay beside her, lending his warmth. No words passed between them. None were needed. The machine came alive with a flicker of soft blue light. She slumped back, dizzy with relief. Her voice cracked when she spoke. "Ranger. It might work." He tilted his head, tail thumping once. She hesitated. The interface needed a biological stabilizer. Human DNA would have worked. She was alone. Alone except for him. She turned toward him. He sat perfectly still, watching her. "I can't force you," she murmured. "If this fails, it could hurt you." As if in answer, Ranger stepped forward and placed his paw gently on her knee. Her throat tightened. She had known generals who showed less courage. With trembling hands, she initiated the sequence. Electrodes extended. A soft hum filled the air. The drone's systems began reading her vital signs, attempting to stabilize her. The machine paused, its protocols searching for a compatible matrix. Then it found him. Ranger barked once as the interface latched onto his biosignature. The system pulsed, taking in his DNA, a wild mix of mammal, instinct, memory. The nanites adjusted in real time, rewriting themselves to accommodate a new biological standard. Earth. Pain lanced through her. She gasped, her back arching. The drone hissed and shuddered, injecting her with a restructured blend of Earth-compatible nanite. Her cells began to absorb them. Her blood thickened. Her breath came easier. She fell into darkness. When she woke, it was morning. Soft light poured through cracks in the wall. Ranger lay beside her, head resting against her hip. She touched her face. Her skin felt warmer. Alive. She sat up slowly. The pain was still there, but no longer fatal. Her systems were stabilizing. The process had worked, imperfectly but enough. She was no longer entirely her own species. She was something new. She looked down at Ranger. "You saved me," she said softly. "And changed me." He yawned, then licked her hand. Her fingers curled into his fur. Outside, the wind stirred the trees. The sky was clear again. But Saralitha's heart beat with a new resolve. There was more to do. She was still stranded. Still hunted. But she wasn't alone. And somewhere in the stars, someone would hear her signal. The drone powered down with a faint hiss, its final task complete. Saralith stood unsteadily, her legs remembering strength they hadn't known in days. Her lungs no longer burned. The tremors in her hands had eased. But the change went deeper than flesh. Something fundamental had shifted within her. Her body had fused with Earth's biology, its rhythms and codes woven now into her own. And it was Ranger's gift that made it possible. He trotted to her side, his tail wagging slightly, tongue lolling as if none of it had been extraordinary. As if he hadn't just saved a life with nothing but his loyalty and blood. She knelt beside him, pressing her forehead gently to his. "I owe you a world," she whispered. "And I have none left to give." The silence that followed was not empty. It was filled with understanding. Time was no longer her enemy, but danger remained. Her pursuers could track residual warp trails from the crash. Earth might appear unremarkable to most spacefaring empires, but it was now part of her story. Part of her DNA. And if the Empire learned she survived, they would not hesitate to scorch this planet to find her. She would not allow that. In the bowels of the old military base, she scavenged what power remained, routing what she could from buried cables and half-dead batteries. It was crude, but enough. The beacon she fashioned was simple. No distress, no coordinate. Just a frequency. A pulse. A message. We are not alone. We are not powerless. The heart of Earth beats with loyalty. With courage. It was encoded in multiple dialects. Hers, the common galactic tongue, and even the old human radio band. She didn't know who would hear it or when. But it would live on. A whisper across the void. She stepped back from the terminal, her hands stained with grease and blood. Ranger sat beside her, silent as always, his ears twitching at the faint hum of the activated signal. "I named you Protector," she said softly, "but that's not enough. You are Sir Ranger, Knight of Earth." He barked once, almost proudly, as if accepting the title with royal dignity. Outside, dawn crept through the ruins. Morning light spilled over fractured concrete and tangled vines, gilding decay with quiet beauty. Sarilith walked to the threshold, Ranger matching her step for step. The world beyond was unfamiliar, primitive, fragile, but alive. And now so was she. She took one last look at the remnants of the facility, then reached into her satchel. Her fingers closed around the final data crystal, her last physical record of her people, their history, their fall. She tucked it into a metal niche behind the console, sealing it there with a strip of fused plating. If she didn't survive what came next, at least some part of her people would remain. Hidden on a forgotten planet where loyalty had a heartbeat and salvation had fur. Ranger nudged her leg gently. He was ready. So was she. Together, they walked into the light. The forest no longer looked like a place of exile. With every step, Sarilith saw signs of life she'd missed before, burrowing insects, blooming ferns, birds stitching the sky with their calls. Earth was not a backwater world. It was a cradle. It had saved her. Ranger had saved her. But peace, she knew, was temporary. By midday, the air grew tense. Ranger froze beside her, ears pricked forward, a growl rising low in his throat. Sarilith dropped to one knee, hand instinctively brushing the hilt of the energy blade at her side, a jury-rigged construct, barely stable but sharp enough to kill. Something shimmered in the air ahead. Then it appeared. A Hunter-class drone. Sleek, obsidian, pulsing faintly with violet light. Empire Tech. Stealth mode deactivated now, it hovered a meter off the ground, lens focused directly on her. A mechanical whine emitted from its core as it scanned, then locked on. She didn't hesitate. Sarilith lunged, her blade snapping forward. The drone fired, crimson energy slicing past her cheek, singeing skin. She spun beneath it, driving her weapon up into its hull. Sparks rained down. The machine shrieked and exploded in a burst of static and shrapnel. She rolled clear, breathing hard, the scent of scorched metal biting at her lungs. Ranger stood protectively in front of her, fur bristled. She pressed her hand against her cheek, burning, but shallow. Not fatal, but the message was clear. They had found her. Her signal must have pinged a listening post. They'd sent a scout. More would follow. She retrieved the drone's cracked memory core, slipping it into her pouch. The encryption was thick, but she might learn their approach vector, maybe even how long until a full squad arrived. If she could stay ahead of them, maybe she could draw them away from Earth's denser population centers. She couldn't let them discover the humans. Not yet. The thought caught her off guard. The humans. Not the primitives. Not the locals. In her mind, they were no longer beneath notice. They were people. This world, in all its wild unpredictability, had become hers to defend. By dusk, she had reached a low ridge overlooking a shallow valley. Through binoculars scavenged from the base, she spotted a village nestled in the trees. Humans moving through their lives, unaware of the cosmic hunt unfolding above them. She could disappear into the wilderness. Let the Empire's hunters circle and leave, never finding her. But then what? She turned to Ranger. He was watching her with that unnerving stillness again, as though reading every thought behind her eyes. I can't just run. He barked once. It wasn't fear. It was agreement. She smiled faintly. Then we make a plan. The drone core revealed more than she'd dared hope. 2 more scouts were inbound. No mothership, yet. The Empire wanted confirmation first. It bought her time. She would lead them astray. Feed them false trails. Give them proof she was dying, weak, moving deeper into uninhabited lands. The forests would help. She knew their bends and blind spots now, better than any satellite ever could. Over the next 2 days, she and Ranger laid trap. EMP spikes made from broken tech. Reflective lures to distort scans. Simulated heat signatures drawn from power cells warmed with friction and sunlight. At night, they camped in silence, the stars cold and indifferent above. But she no longer felt alone. When the next drone came, it landed in the trap zone, a dead canyon where signal echoes would mimic her presence. It hovered, scanned, then sent a transmission. Sarilith activated the EMP. The drone collapsed midair, twitching violently as systems fried. Before its memory core shut down, she injected a false location, coordinates deep in the northern ice cap. Let them chase ghosts. Her health wavered. The nanites needed replenishment soon, and Earth had no source. But her will was iron. She had made a promise. This planet would not burn because of her. She would not let it become another casualty of her empire's ruin. On the 5th night they returned to the ridge. Lights blinked in the village below. A child laughed, the sound carried faintly on the wind. Sarilith rested her hand on Ranger's neck. They deserve time, she said. To grow. To discover. Without fear. Ranger leaned into her hand. In the distance, the stars pulsed. Somewhere, a cruiser moved through space. She would feel it when they arrived. Hear the hum of warp engines in her bones. But not yet. For now there was quiet. Purpose. A moment earned. They stood there, side by side, an alien fugitive and a dog with the heart of a warrior. Ready. Waiting. And watching the world they now both called home.